Okay, this is so fun. I cannot wait to have this conversation with Jaime and share this with all of you. Jaime is someone who has probably given me an opportunity to experience a lot more growth than anyone else. And so Jaime Gordon, she is a friend and she's a mentor to me. She is a transformative life coach. And it's funny to give her a title like that because I'm just like, she is a straight up like soul worker, soul seer. Just I don't even know how to explain the gift that she has, but it has been a gift in my life and is exactly why I wanted to bring her on the podcast and share her with all of you. She has a way of asking the perfect right questions for you to be able to figure out what's going on inside of you without her saying like, this is going on and this is going on. And why I think that's such a gift is because when we come to the answer, all of a sudden we take more ownership over it, right? There's not like the defensiveness that we get when someone else is talking to us. And Jaime will never straight up just tell you what you want to hear. She wants you to answer those questions. And I don't know, I believe you do that on purpose. Is that true?
Yes, it is. Well, it's both, right? Sometimes what I think I see, right? And I might actually be correct. And there's times I don't know, but I do know that when you discover something for yourself, you're exactly right. Like it means something to you, which is why, like, think about like you go to a talk and someone gives you like a story, like, and your brain starts to like extract meaning from it. And that meaning you can digest versus someone saying, hey, you're doing this wrong, or this isn't the best step, or like, do you see what you're actually doing here? Versus like, oh, you know what I think I'm doing is this. And then it feels true.
It's so true. And I've been lucky enough to watch. So I coached with Jaime at Susie's school retreats. And so I have been able to watch her live coach thousands of women and use her gift, her skill set. I don't even know how many times, and see the impact that it makes. So that's originally where we met. We met at Susie's school. We went as attendees to the very first Susie school. And I had this connection to her. I was like, I need you in my life. And I wasn't really exactly even sure what you did at that point. So we met there. And then we ended up coaching for so many retreats together. Jamie's also an awesome mom. I have loved watching her with her daughter and her two sons. She came to my mom and teen retreat and coached alongside of me. And that was just like the best experience to be able to be there with our daughters together and know that like the future is in good hands. What else would you like them to know about you?
Oh gosh, man, that felt like a floodgate of so much goodness. I don't even know what to add. Yeah, I love coaching. I coach individuals, and I also like coach through courses. And it's just something that, like, if you had told me even 10 years ago that I'd be doing this, I would have said, you're smoking crack. I don't know.
You've lost your mind.
You've lost your actual mind. That is not me. But
honestly, I think that part of your story is what gives you the humility to be open in this conversation of like, this is what I'm hearing. Is this true? And like, because you're not this person that comes like this arrogant, like, I know these things and I am, like, this is who I am. I was born for this. Like, that's not you have seen the transition and the changes that have happened in your life through this work that you do. And now you like kindly and generously and honestly and humbly offer that to other people. And I think it's why you're so good at what you do.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that just the unique road that I've been on is kind of given me, like, I've been able to see those pieces in me. And so then I recognize it in somebody else, or at least I think I recognize it in somebody else. And so I can ask questions and then they can discover that part of them too, which is like a gift. When you can know something you didn't know before, that's when you have a chance to transform something in your life that you thought was just like, it is what it is.
Yeah. And obviously here on this podcast, like, we are talking about all things growth. So when you went from, I can't believe I would ever coach anyone, and now you're coaching all of these women and changing their lives. Like, how long do you think it took you to look back and see that you had experienced growth?
Well, it's like, it's one of those things that is like so slowly over time and then kind of all at once. Like I spent, essentially like all of my 20s battling anxiety and depression. And I did a lot of work to get from a place of just trying to like make myself like if you'd asked me, like in my 20s and 30s, like what would be like my biggest value, it would have been certainty. Cause that's as much as I could like see. And as I did more work, I realized like, wow, there is actually a lot of choice and freedom on the other side of a conversation with yourself that I had no clue was even a resource to tap into. And so I think the idea of growth is that you're never done. It's like a Mary Poppins bag. There's always something more in it. Like you can always find something more, not that because we're like bad, broken and wrong where we are, but because we want like a fulfilled, meaningful life. And that's like, like the idea of like dance with growth. There's going to be times where you are doing like the most amazing pirouette. And there's going to be times where you're like, all you can do is tap your toe. But like, so like, and that's what makes the dance beautiful. Like if it was all like big, bold, everything movements, it would lose the nuance of what makes a dance so inviting. And that's what our life is. Like we have seasons of like
so true.
fast growth and we have seasons of slow growth. Like neither one are better than the other.
Right.
As long as like we realize that growth is an option.
Yeah, it's absolutely an option. And that's exactly why I named this podcast The Dance of Growth, is because I think sometimes we get so set in on what growth is that it's like this outcome. And honestly, when you were like talking about that, I was thinking about, I have these like plants in my kitchen. And they were kind of dying and they were out in the she shed. And so they were dying because people weren't taking care of them. They probably weren't getting enough light. And so one day I decided to go grab them and I brought them into the kitchen right by my sliding glass doors. And I've really taken care of them and they're like so beautiful. They're growing. And all of a sudden I realized that one wasn't really thriving very well, but it was like big and it was beautiful. And all of a sudden I was like, it's outgrown its pot. And I was like, right. And I was like, oh, that's so interesting. Like growth really is this continuation of like, even if you grow and you're beautiful and it's beautiful, it's like the Mary Poppins bag. There's always going to be more, which is like not meant to be overwhelming or like a negative thing. Like you're never enough, right? It's like, it's going to keep growing as long as we keep giving ourselves space to do so.
Yeah. Like the difference of growing because you're feeling shame of where you are versus growing because like that's hopeful and it's joy filled. Like they're two different, like it's not bad that the plant outgrew the pot. It's like a great sign. It's outgrown its pot. That's exciting. But then you're going to have to actually remove it from its home. That's comfortable.
And it's a mess.
And it's a mess. It makes a mess. Always,
it
right?
Makes a mess.
And then the plant kind of gets in a shock because it's in a totally new environment and it's trying to like spread the roots out and become like, and so it can grow more. So like the foundation of the roots has to get bigger before you actually see the plant get healthier. And it's like, if we could actually look at ourselves that way, that even in a season where we feel like, oh my gosh, I feel like the plant that is in the she shed with no sunlight, be like, okay, awesome. I know that I'm in the she shed. No bad.
Yeah. Like I'm not dead.
Awesome.
I'm not dead. I'm just barely surviving.
Right. And there will be seasons like that. And there'll be seasons where you're feeling that way, not because you're not giving yourself sunshine. It's because you're holding yourself to a container that no longer is adequate for where you want to go.
I picked out this pot. I paid good money for this pot. I love this pot. I'm really comfortable in this pot, but it's like, we have to either allow other people. I would say you were a very like integral person who helped me get outside of the pot I was sitting in. So sometimes some of it is us being willing to get out of that pot. And sometimes we also can invite people into our lives that can also help us. Right.
Yeah. I think our friendships often act as like the pots. So you're one of those friends for me where like, there's the people, your friends and you're all the same size pots and you all have the same, where you at, where your healing journey is, like, not that one is better than the other, right? They're just different. And as you start to outgrow that pot, you have friends who aren't outgrowing their pots. And it feels lonely when you have to like actually move into a new pot. Or even if it's not, they say like that one example is it's like friendships, but maybe another one is like your work environment or your relationships or your finances or whatever it is. Like it's time to move into the next dream or the next thing. Like, and it can feel really unsettling to go get another pot.
I even like pictured myself like starting, and maybe some of you guys can relate to this, as like starting in a flower bed with surrounded by a lot of different flowers or plants, and then you have outgrown this box, and maybe you're taking up, maybe you're like a zucchini plant. You ever tried to plant anything around a zucchini? Because all of a sudden it's like half zucchini, half watermelon, half, because they are just like growing. And so it's like put them off on their own, and it's not bad. It's just like different. So I think that's a fascinating idea. And I think that's really good self-reflection for all of us, is like, what pot are we in? And is this a good pot for us right now? Is it time to maybe look at upgrading to a different pot? Is it time to, take ourselves out of the she shed to some sunlight? Do we need some water? Like, what do we actually need? So when you look back over your life and you do some reflecting about growth that you have experienced. Sometimes there's growth that you're like, holy cow, I'm in this season of growth and this feels like a lot. It feels scary. It feels overwhelming. So a season like that, or also there's these seasons where it just feels like really hard. Maybe you're out of your pot completely and you're like, is there going to be any soil put back in a new pot for me? And it doesn't feel like growth, but once you look back, you're like, wow, that was massive growth. When you look back at your life, is there an experience that comes to mind that you would want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I decided that I was going to go and get certified as a transformational coach,
can I ask you something? I'm going to interrupt you on that because I keep forgetting to ask this question when you're talking about this. When you went back to be a transformational life coach, was that for you, or did you have the intention of helping other people?
I had the intention of helping other people, but what I pictured and what I'm actually doing are two very different things. Awesome. I knew that I had pictured something much smaller than what I'm actually in right now, which I'm grateful for. But like, I didn't have the capacity to dream of what I have now when I was there.
Interesting.
So, and I think that like, like our capacity to dreaming is really kind of like our next thing that we're capable of is like what we start to dream about. And when we,
that's
like, and then we
so important to remember. Yeah.
Like there's things that I like literally, like, this, how many times did I say, like, I do not want to write a course. I don't want to do curriculum. I hate it. That's like the worst. I would rather, like, I don't know, eat mayonnaise for the rest of my life. And that'd be the only thing I ate than write curriculum and do stuff. Right. And now I'm like, here I am doing that. And I love it. And now I'm like going like, ooh, maybe I want to do another course. Like,
well, it's because at the beginning of it, you look and you say like the writing of a whole course feels insane. But then when you finally get to a place where you're teaching all of these principles over and over again, you're like, oh, I already have the course. Like I have the course in, I just have to put it on paper. And you see how many more people can be reached because not everyone has the ability or the finances or the time to be a one-on-one client with you, but you can reach a lot of people in these courses.
Yeah.
Sorry, I interrupted you, but yeah.
No, that's okay. So somebody that's like listening to this and you're like, okay, that's great. You have like, like this big dream, right? Like, oh, Chelsea, great. You have a podcast, or like, oh, you're doing a course, and you're thinking like, I don't even have a dream to like paint my walls. Like, I want you to know, like, that's where I was, right? Like where it was like, I didn't even have, like, I was so, I would say content. And when I say content, I was letting myself settle for the level of despair I could, handle. And I was calling that happiness. I was calling that contentment. That's actually like something from Soren Kierkegaard. That's not my own thing. But it's just a form of despair.
Yeah.
So, okay. Sliding door moment for me. I can remember I had to fly from Indianapolis, where I live, to San Francisco, where this, my coaching program was. And I had to do it like for several different weekends. I had to fly out for these like in-person events. And so it's kickoff weekend. I'm of course nervous because I'm doing something so far outside my comfort zone. Like, I don't even know at this point, like the idea
what to expect
person. Like, I don't even want to do it. Like, what do I expect? And I'm like, I walk into this building, like I'm flying across the country, like by myself. And so I get to the airport super early in the morning. It's like Friday morning, and the thing starts in Friday evening. I get there, I get on my plane. I sit on the plane for like an hour, and then they get on, because there's like what we're waiting for, like them to de-ice the plane.
Yeah. What does
they
that
get on?
mean?
They say,
I hear it all the time.
Yeah. So they're like, we've timed out, the crew has timed out. And so we had to get off the plane. And so then I had to get a new flight. I'm like, okay. So then I get a new flight, and I had connecting flights. So get a new flight. Okay. I get on that plane. I get off that plane. I get on that plane. I get off the plane like 3 times, then they cancel the flight. The weather just starts. So I'm in this airport. I got there like at 5 a.m, maybe even earlier, because my flight was like a 5:30. So I must've been there like super early. And I'm supposed to land like, I don't know, in the morning and have all this time I'd planned like, and then I'll be able to be, no. So all this like window of like margin is disappearing. And you
were already anxious to begin with.
Yes.
And so then you're adding all of these levels.
Yes. So then I'm on a new plane. I get on that plane. We're waiting. We pull away. We're waiting to be, like de-ice. And then we have to pull back up and get off the plane. And then finally I get on a plane that takes me not where I was originally going, but someplace else. So it takes me, so I get there at 5:30 a.m. I finally get to, I believe it's Atlanta, and we're talking, it is midnight by this time. And I have like a window, and I'm already late. That flight was late. Everything's late. And I literally am sprinting through, I don't know, a mile of airport. And I'm like, at this point, not physically fit. I can literally like taste blood because I'm running so hard. We all know that. We know that feeling. Yeah. We all know that taste blood space. I can see it I can see it. And I see her closing the door, and there's like 4 of us that are like running, and we're like, no, slow motion. And it didn't matter. She had closed. She's like, we already gave the seats away. It doesn't matter if I could open this door. I can't. We're like, okay. So now it's middle of the night. and we're time zones, and I still have to like drive from Sacramento to Sonoma County. Like I had to rent, it's like a whole thing. So then I'm like, literally like, okay, what do I do? I'm like I'm listening on the phone. They put it on speakerphone so I could listen to what's happening. I'm missing the first night completely. They're like, okay, you can get on a flight like at 2 a.m. So I'm sitting there like in the fetal position, practically, trying to get on this other plane. And by the time I get on this plane, I am so frazzled. I've been in so much self-judgment over myself for being such a nervous wreck, for all of the fits, the tantrums I was throwing, and like, let's be reasonable, but I was not being very kind with myself. And
like somehow you had made it your fault. Like I should be able to handle this more. Like I was so stressed out that I was like, you're so weak. Why do you think you can even do this? Like you can't even, there's like that negative thing. And it was all of a sudden, I remember sitting there in the back of this super crowded plane taking off. And I'm like, there was just this moment that I was like, I am so sick of my own bullshit. And it was like this moment of like surrender. And that was the moment I was at my breaking point. I was either going to tuck tail and say, forget it, because I'm already going to be missing it. I'm already going to literally not sleep at all and go straight to the morning of a 13-hour day work of, this heavy work. Either I'm going to say, nope, I'm going to go to sleep. I'm going to get a plane back. Like, I'm not doing this, or I'm going to be all in. And I'd never let myself be all in because I was always so scared. Like there was always a reason why I couldn't be all in. And there was that moment where I really felt like it was like a divine intervention to bring me to my knees. And like, not that I hadn't, there was plenty of times for me to be brought to my knees. No, but there was never a willingness to actually just be like, you know what? Like I'm giving myself to this completely. I'm like freaking gonna hug this cactus of growth and let myself be in it and not try to like be safe with it, but let me be in it. And it was like, as the plane took off, I just literally said, okay, God, you get all of it. Like you get all of it. I'm done trying to self-preserve. I'm done. Like, and of course, like, do I try to self-preserve? Yes, it's a human thing. Right. But in that moment, it was, I'm willing to do it. And I like, now, does that mean I was happy? Does that mean I wasn't sad? Does that not mean that I like literally, when I got to the hotel and I had to cry myself to sleep because I was like an overtired baby. Yeah. I slept for a half hour and then got up and dragged myself to the thing. But it was like this moment that will be forever seared in my mind, where it was like, okay, that part of me where I just give up because it's hard, she's gone. That's done. I love that. That was my moment. That is actually so amazing. And I think that the important part is that we look, because we will all have many situations like this in our life where we're brought to our knees and we literally have to choose in that moment if we're going to like crawl back, like go from our knees. It's going to be just as easy to just like slither down and like lay on the floor and be like, you know what, it must have not meant to be for me because there's too much opposition. Or we're like at our knees and we're like, I'm going to stand up.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to let all of that nonsense go. And I think when we like get to those breaking points, they feel terrible. They feel horrible, but just like, I feel like
but beautiful.
They're beautiful because all of a sudden we decide to fight for ourselves. We're not fighting against ourselves. We choose to stop and go like, I'm going to fight for myself and for this thing that feels more important than any opposition coming at me or that has been on my shoulders.
Yeah, because believe me, that was the most benign example of what could have brought me to my knees. I could give you a mountain of stories of things that were much more painful that did not bring me to that point. But this particular time was like, I was in a little silo and like the weather and travel. Why would that? I could tell you some heartbreaking stories that should have brought me to that point. It didn't.
Do you remember me losing my mind in the airport just very, very small time ago? There's something that happens when you are like in turmoil, in internal turmoil, and then it feels like the universe is like, doesn't care. And it's just like, well, guess what? Now you're going to go sleep in a hotel at 1 a.m. And now you're not going to get your luggage. And now you're not going to get on this plane. And now your family's going to go here and you're going to, I mean, and then all of a sudden you're just like, it's true. Everything's, and then it breaks you. And then all of a sudden you just like find this strength inside of you. If you choose to like come back, like it, but it's weird because it is this, like, I think you, like the surrender, I think you used the word like kind of surrendered to like let go of, walked away from all that knowing that you couldn't control everything that was happening around you, but you could control like what you were going to do next. And I just think that's so beautiful. And I'm so glad that you continued in that path because I mean, you know how I feel, and I hope that everyone gets to experience you in this way of like nurturing and teaching. And it's like this tender guidance, but honest and vulnerable, self, like you'll share the parts of you that made you learn these things in order to help other people. And I think there's so much value in that. And so I just love that now we have this idea of this sliding glass door visual from you of a time that really was like changed the whole future for you so that you could do what you're doing now for yourself, but then for everyone else who gets to learn from you. So I'm so grateful that you shared that. One thing that's really important to me is that in this seasons of growth that are fast or slow, or even just maybe they're hard, but that we pay attention to what's happening with us as ourselves. And I say the term fire in our heart, peace in our soul a lot, because I do think that we can dance with both of those things. I don't think that I think sometimes we accidentally just choose to dance with one or the other. But I just really want, my listeners and the people in my life and myself, I want us to be able to dance with both of those things. So my question for you is, what is something right now in your life that's truly setting your heart on fire?
That's a great question, because I think that like where my brain wants to go is like, where's something just truly amazing. Right. And the reality is like, do I have anything that's like truly like just the most amazing thing? And I go like, well, there's nothing like I'm so excited about. But then when I actually play with that for a second, I go, no, actually it is the thing that the thing that is also hard is also the thing that's good for me right now. Like I'm in a season of transition. My daughter's leaving for college and moving out of state. And so, my youngest just had a birthday. Like I've got like all these transitions happening, and there is like a sweetness of how to navigate them and their evolution and the connection. And that like excites me. It also is the thing that is terrifying and like sad. There's like an element of it's at both pieces. Like, it's like, I'm so excited for this, like, I mean, yes, I'm also excited about, some work stuff, but like when I talk about like in my life, it's like growing relationship and community with the people who I love, and also being able to hold the parts of those relationships or the struggles that people are in, and being able to like see the joy in that, and be able to like balance both and hold both at the same time. There's like it feels authentic.
Yeah.
Like that it's not like, oh, all rainbows, and like, then that's just what I meant. I have seasons where like I really don't feel the struggle, and I just feel the excitement. I could, like be so excited about it. And there's other times where it's like, no, I'm in this struggle, but even in this season, like there is like the beauty in it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like I don't want to give the impression that if you are like growthful, you're not going to have heavy emotions. You absolutely, right? Like that there's the both, which I love that you like, absolutely. There's like, for you, it's like, you always are like adding in the both, like instead of it,
because
just
I think
like,
that's when we like bring suffering on ourselves, when we expect that just because we are feeling one certain way, or we're not feeling like, or if we're feeling both, right? It's like, it's in grief. People feel guilty for being happy, but it's like, no, you can be really sad and also feel joy. And so being willing to dance with both of those things and the fire in your heart, I see a fire in your heart, like my goal for my kids were to grow and to be strong and to go do great things. And so I like you spending time with Haley and going and visiting and the school and all of that feels like fire in your heart, because that was something that was so important to you. And that's okay that they're still on your side of it, like this, oh, but I didn't want it to happen this fast, or, oh, I didn't actually really think it would ever come to be, or, it's like, so yes, I can see that fire in your heart. And then on the flip side of that is what is something that you do in your own life to fight for the peace in your soul?
Yeah. I think allowing for whatever comes up, for there to be a space for it. And then, so like, if like there are waves of like grief or questioning, what is this next, but making space for it. And obviously like we get busy, we have life. It's not like we can sit around and like contemplate our belly buttons all day long. But if we can actually, like give ourselves a window, or to know like, okay, I notice where I feel really heavy, that feels heavy, but I have to do X, Y, and Z, like real life situations, and be like, I'm going to make sure I come back to it so I can move through it, versus like ignoring it. Because when we ignore it, it just creates this backlog. And when we have to like break through the backlog, that's a lot harder, and it feels overwhelming. And it's a really great place for us to start to feel stuck in heavier emotions, versus them just to be like waves on a beach that like get to go and come, and like that is a beautiful part of the process. Just like we feel excitement and so much fun. Like I think of my daughter and I'm like, she's going to have so much fun, and I'm so excited about it. And this is going to be an exciting new chapter. And also I'm going to walk by her room and she's not going to be there, like, and be able to like feel that, honor like that in that moment. It only takes a few seconds to honor like the sadness, and go like, hey, guess what? I just processed some of that grief, instead of waiting
and let it move through you, rather than just letting it store up and turn into this toxic. Emotions.
And there's times where we store it and we don't. And there's times where we store it and we don't even know that we're storing it until it starts to come out sideways. Like I was just on a family vacation, and I knew that I had some emotions to process, but because I just like, taken Haley to school, and there was a lot of heavy emotions, and I was able to feel, but I also wanted to be present. And so I knew that there was some deeper stuff happening for me, but I wasn't like at my conscious mind. And so like, there was a point in our vacation where I was just like, oh, I think I just need to cry. And like, I started to cry, and then I started to like sob. And like 10 minutes later, I was like, wow, I didn't realize that I had been holding so much.
Yeah. Because when you were with her, you didn't want to make this feel sad. It was something super exciting and for her when you had gone, but then you were just carrying like the sadness on the opposite side of that.
Right. Like little bits of like a little like flicker of sadness that didn't feel big enough to actually even think or feel about it. But that flicker was just waiting for me. And I
Yeah.
accumulated a bunch of those.
Yeah.
And it was enough to like, we're like, okay, well, now I have to do like actually, and in that moment, it was actually like tears.
Yeah. And
And
tears are
like,
great. Tears are a
oh, I
great
love
way to
tears.
process. Yeah. Right. They're great.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I think that's so awesome. You also have like, I know you're so good at writing and you send out text prompts of journal ideas of things because even just getting them outside of our brain and sometimes I think I have nothing to write about and I
Oh
start
yeah.
writing and then all of a sudden I'm like, why do I have 7 pages? But then it feels so much better.
Oh, it's so cathartic to
Mhm.
get it. It's, it's like so stupid, but like Shrek, and he says like better out than in after he
Yeah,
burps, right? Like, well, it's better out than in because when we
absolutely.
turn it in, it just gets stored in our body
Mhm.
and we may think we're just fine. And
Yeah.
then we blow at the smallest thing, or we find ourselves just in our phones or in our shopping or in our eating, any sort of like, like coping strategy that we have. And if we actually will let it out at like as often as we can, like I say, like checking in with, even if you're not going to write, like one of the practices I do is like at the gym, ask myself, where am I angry? And I let myself like target anger, whether that's just physical anger in my body, or I try to bring up the emotion of anger because I know for me, anger is something that can be repressed. And so like, if you're someone who like, I actually like never, ever feel angry, there's a good chance you probably repress anger. Like if you are somebody who like never feels sad, you might repress sadness. It doesn't mean you don't
Yeah.
experience them. It means that you at a young age figured out a really clever way to turn your awareness to it off.
Yeah.
And
It's
so it's
so
like,
interesting.
and when you can like be with it, like you get less uncomfortable with it. And B, you release what's in your body and you have more capacity for the things that you want instead of like walking around with like, cement shoes and cement backpack and all that sort of stuff. Like you get to like, as you're accumulating the weight, being able to take it off.
Yeah, no, it's like it's so true. And it goes back to this pot that we talked about at the beginning. It's like we might even have toxic soil and we're just like, it's fine, it's soil. We're just going to leave it
Yeah.
here because it's still soil, but it's like not giving us the nutrients that we need to be able to grow. And it's actually doing more harm than good, even though it looks like soil. So
Mhm.
I love that so much. And I think it's so important that this process of growing is the more we know about ourselves and where we're at and how we're feeling, the more we are able to like continue to grow. And honestly, the more you know about where you're at and how you're feeling, I honestly think the more like trust and love that you can have for yourself, because you feel like you're being honest with yourself. Like you don't feel like you're against yourself. You all of a sudden feel like you are for yourself. And so you just give yourself more compassion and more grace and also more encouragement to continue on this path of growth. So
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
so much for sharing that story with us and your wisdom. Where can these people find you on online?
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram at unstuckologist or on my website, jaimegordonlifecoaching.com.
And I'll have all of that in the show notes, but Jaime is Jaime, which is going to confuse some people. So I'll make
It
sure
is,
that
but you
that's
know what?
listed.
I knew that people would put in regular Jaime. So guess what? If you spell it incorrectly, you'll still end up at my website.
Of course
Okay.
she did. I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for interviewing with me. I absolutely love you. I'm grateful for you. I cannot wait for all these people to come find you and to learn from you and to connect with you. You are a gift to the world. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you so much. You are a gift to the world. And I just want to say thank you for stepping into this so bravely.